Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Dark ShadBros. I don't know how long it's been this time. It's been 2 weeks or a week. I can't remember.
2 weeks.
I honestly can't remember. Has it been 2 weeks?
Yeah, January 8th.
It was a week back and a
January
week off?
18th, I'm sorry.
That's how long it was. And how is everybody? Is everyone cold and snowy? Because that's how it's been here. There's been all the snow
dreadful
emergencies from place to place.
It's like living in an ever-loving icebox.
Right, minus 17 and minus this and minus that. So it's been bizarre weather-wise. I think somebody pointed out on a board recently you never saw snow in Collinsport. We always heard about the rain, and we occasionally saw it. Someone said that you never saw the rain, and that's not true, actually. You do see rain at least once. I think it's when they're searching for Sarah. I think they have rain trickling outside of the window in the drawing room where Naomi is
In the movie,
waiting. Yeah.
in House of Dark Shadows, there was a deluge.
Yeah, well, that was the that was the Tarrytown Fire Department. But on the show, I think the only time we actually might see it is that when Ben is searching for Sarah, and finally gets her home. Yeah. And once somebody thought to throw rain on Don Briscoe in 1968. He comes in. Julia is perfect. He's given her a ride back home, and she has a kerchief on, and not a hair is out of place, but his hair is stuck to his head, and his jacket is wet. I have a feeling that was probably Don Briscoe who came up with that. So I don't know if there's anybody tuning in for the first time. If you are, I'm Peter Mack, and I started this opus 2 years ago, and I work as a cabaret performer, primarily specializing in voices and working as Judy Garland. And I've worked with some of the DS stars over the years. Laura Parker was a dear friend of mine. Got to write her last off-Broadway play for her back in 2007, Mrs. Scrooge, which was a modern-day retelling of A Christmas Carol, which, funny enough, photos leaked today of Johnny Depp, who is in the middle of filming his turn at playing Ebenezer. And he looks interesting. Some interesting prosthetics, and he's not wearing the Barnabas Collins Nosferatu makeup.
Is that a Tim Burton project?
I don't know if it's Tim or not. I don't know if Tim is doing it or not. He looks good. I don't like the cap. He's actually wearing a jacket that's akin to Barnabas's 1967 lounging jacket. Not the red velvet one that he would wear later on, but that kind of damask jacquard jacket. There's pictures of him roaming around. Which one? It's a kind of blue.
The really cool green?
Yeah, that kind of bluish. Yeah. It's got all the pleats in it.
The Indian spell.
When he does the spell, right.
Yeah.
Right, to start to haunt Julia. Yep.
Yeah, I love that. That's my favorite dressing gown of his. That's so cool. So dramatic. So
there's there's pictures of Depp in a very similar robe to to that. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention what's been going on this week. And I'll probably lose subscribers, and that's A-OK. Our hearts and minds are with the family of Alex Peretti. And I know Catherine, who's a native Minnesotan, has been vehemently vocal about this and has gone nose to nose with fans. She's not having any of it. She doesn't like the situation our country is in, and she's been very vocal about it. And I'd say she's right on the money. I think Maggie Evans would probably agree with her. So it's crazy that we watch Dark Shadows to escape. You look around, forget Barnabas and Quentin and the Leviathans and Nicholas Blair and Count Petofi. These are the real monsters when you turn on the news. This is what we're living in right now. I do want to commend Catherine, though, for being so vehement about all of this and putting it out there.
Courageous.
And for not taking any guff. And I know Lamar, as in Miss Parker, would be very proud of her as well.
She's spinning in the wind.
Yeah. So, at any rate.
Like the great Peter Cushing once said, we're monsters.
Yeah. Well, and then the whole point of all of that stuff is that we have, they're morality plays. It's supposed to be about the good guys winning. It's supposed to be about the good guys winning. Yeah. Yeah. Which is so cool about Barnabas, because he became the anti-hero. And what else has been going on? I'm trying to think media-wise. I was pissed about the Wicked and the Oscars. We're having this conversation with Jessica Stevenson the other night. I don't know who I'm sure there are a good many people who have never seen Wicked the movie. The play, which it's toured all over. There are so many national touring companies of it. But if you go to see part 2, it's Act 2. And if you ever go to see a Broadway show, Act 2 is normally shorter than Act 1. And the cool thing about doing a movie, and that John Shue had at his disposal, and Winnie Holtzman, the writer of both the play and the movie, and I forget the other girl's name who co-wrote the movie with Winnie, but you can extrapolate. You can broaden it. So rather than having an hour-long Act 2, now you could have a 2-hour and 45-minute second half to really delve in a little bit further. And I thought they did a very good job with that. I think they should have looked at Cynthia and Ariana as a whole, and John Shue as a whole, instead of, they should have looked at both parts. But I know that Defying Gravity just walked away with a Grammy for both ladies from the first movie a few hours ago. So so that was cool. But but then again, with the Academy, I don't think anyone will ever remember a damn one of these movies that have been nominated, but we'll still be talking about The Wizard of Oz and Wicked 30, 40, 50, 60, the same way we talk about Dark Shadows. Dark Shadows never walked away with anything, and yet here we are in the midst of the big 6-0. So I'd like to chalk it up to that.
Well, how old is The Wizard of Oz? And they've just built that marvelous in the round in Las Vegas. I mean,
the Sphere.
Sphere.
Yeah, which is bringing in billions, or I think billions.
Yeah, pretty good proof. It'll be around for a long, long time.
Yeah, yeah. Even though Gone with the Wind swept the awards that year, and it's a classic in its own right, but it's. I always say this as Judy in my show, because it's a fact. This was about 5 years ago, that after they screened, a movie firm screened 9,700 films. And after screening all of those films, they voted The Wizard of Oz the most influential movie in all of movie history. And that went with how many times is it cross-referenced in pop culture, in other movies, in plays, in sitcoms, in dramas, so that's how you withstand the test of time. I think, when you, after that many movies, almost 10,000 movies. So, But like DS, no one's quoting Days of Our Lives or, doing 20 podcasts as I think there are for DS. And yes, somebody just pointed out we lost the great Catherine O'Hara this week, which was a crushing blow, an absolute crushing blow. She kept her illness a secret. And from what I'm led to believe, she had a rare disease where her heart was in reverse. It's 1 out of 10,000 people that wind up with this rare heart disease where her heart was on on the right, not the left. I'm getting it wrong, but more and more is coming out about her illness. But it came as great. Macaulay Culkin gave a lovely tribute on his Instagram. It's
Called her mom, didn't he?
yeah, he called her mom. And what a funny lady! I mean,
Tear up.
never seen all of her, but I mean, it's funny for me because Home Alone. I'm from that generation. We grew up with the Home Alone movies. We talked a few months ago about Witch's Night Out. She's the voice of Rotten with Gilda Radner in that cult classic cartoon Witch's Night Out. And then Waiting for Guffman, which is one of my favorite movies because if you know community theater, Chris Guest nailed it with the inner workings of community theater. It's if you've never seen Waiting for Guffman, for all of them, but Catherine O'Hara in particular, it's well worth checking out. You'll laugh a lot.
I used to sneak and stay up late at night, and on public television here, they would run SCTV, 11:30 at night. I believe I used to stay up and watch her, Margaret Meehan, and all of those wonderful characters she used to play.
Yep, somebody. I didn't realize she did a Joan Crawford sketch on there as well. That's been making the rounds the last 48 hours.
And the Brooke Shields one too.
Oh, did she do Brooke Shields?
You thought she'd be around forever,
Yeah. Who brought that up? I think it was Jessica.
Yeah, we talked.
Jess, right? I think we talked about that the other night. That it was like it just as jarring as Diane Keaton. Who you thought, but yeah, she's not going anywhere. She's not, so.
So vibrant, so full of life and wonderful.
And while we have this opportunity, we should just take a minute really quickly. Another 70s show that was on the air. Certainly a big part of my childhood was Sanford and Son. And today we lost Amand Wilson, who played Fred Sanford's son. So just throwing that out there as well. The only remaining cast member is the gentleman who played the officer, the black officer, who was also in 227. He played Marla Gibbs' husband.
Oh, Hal Williams.
Hal Williams is the only remaining cast member.
I didn't realize Hal was on Sanford and Son.
Oh, yeah, he was the black cop.
Hoppy and I can't remember the other one. Officer Hoppy and the white guy was hilarious too.
Nancy Culp did a few episodes too.
The white guy was the actor Howard Platt.
Howard Platt. He was a very deep, awkward guy. I loved it.
Well, I know your guy worked with Red Fox. He had wonderful stories about Red Fox, Jonathan Harris.
He was Mr. Monet, the antique dealer for the commode.
But what is it? It was in that interview where he goes, they say, what about Red Fox? And he goes, oh, that awful man who I came to love.
Right. He said, Red, I was the only person there of a different color. Red, why am I the only person here of a different color? He said, guess who lives across the street? And he said, I'm a terrible guesser. Tell me, who lives across the street? Miss Whitey and blind. Jonathan busted out laughing. He said, it's true.
And he said, he suggested to Red, he said, was it William Morris? He said, get with William Morris because they're real crooks.
They're operators. They operate. They want to
get
more money.
Yeah.
I'm a star.
Yeah, so it's been a weird week. All these people have been there's someone else. I know there's someone else we're missing in terms of famous people that have that have passed on.
We should introduce our guest host who was missing last week.
Well, yes, Michael Panzerato is back.
In
Michael,
full
tell
force.
the folks about yourself.
I am, what's left of me is Michael Panzerato. I am also an actor, sort of in the same vein as Peter. I'm more of a tribute guy for Jonathan Harris, who will always be my number one influence. I did a lovely sort of animated thing about Lost in Space, which was quickly yanked off of YouTube for some silly fighting and things of this nature. But it might be back. It was called Escape from Earth. I've been invited informally, formally to, there's a 60th anniversary coming up in Sydney, Australia, where Lost in Space was the longest running rerunning series ever. They're doing a big thing there in Sydney, so I've been invited to that. We'll see how that works out for me. Where I'll be doing a one-man thing, The Boy, the Doctor, the Robot, and me. And yeah, I love to work, love being here. These guys are wonderful. I love just chatting about Dark Shadows. It was a big one for me, and I think tonight you'll see some of the things about the show that still terrify me at 51. So it's good to see you all. Lovely to be back. Missed you
And
all greatly.
don't forget, guys, to like and subscribe. I should have mentioned that out the gate. If you're new, or even if you're not new and you haven't done it yet, please hit like and subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything, and it helps us in terms of gaining more and more audience members. And leave comments. And we've been a little bit remiss, as Barnabas would say, in terms of. I went on and said, "Shoot, we missed a couple of these comments from old shows." So we'll go in and we'll make sure we respond to some of those comments, because we like to do that. So whether you're watching now or later on, leave a comment. We will get to it eventually. And last episode, when we came back into the new year, was the Barnabas, where we just kind of free associated some of our favorite Fridtastic moments, Frid's fantastic moments. And there were a whole bunch I forgot. In the last 2 weeks, I've been like, oh, wow, I forgot about that one. It's interesting, if you put Frid's work together, people love to go on and on about the missed lines and the little inverting of whatever, his dyslexia, poor baby, and yet his good moments far outweigh his bad ones. And I think there's some interesting stuff there, given the topic we've chosen tonight. When I started watching the show fully, I was introduced to it in spring of '82, when it was on NBC in reruns. That was the first time I saw it. And then I saw it on New Jersey Network. And at that point, it was color episodes. It was a lot of the of Barnabas and the Haunting of Julia with Woodard's Ghost and so on. And then the tapes came out. And once the tapes came out, I got to really sink my teeth into it. That was it. There was no stopping me. And the first 4 tapes I rented were at West Coast Video in Middle Village, Queens, near where my grandma lived. And I think I rented the first tape, and then we went back the next day and got volumes 2, 3, and 4. And I binged them. I just watched them, and I thought it was the end. I was like, this can't be the end. There's other episodes. I know there's more color episodes. And then I went to Tower Records, and there was volumes 5, 6, and 7, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I was, those were the ones that had they had some weird covers on them, including that infamous portrait of Barnabas and Maggie in Josette's room. Whoever did the color correction turned Josette's wedding dress blue and gave her a pilgrim collar. Made absolutely no sense. I think they were just trying to be fun and eclectic. But I remember eating this storyline up and going back and reviewing Barnabas meeting Maggie and kidnapping her. This is really good stuff. And I think I said this the other night to Jessica. 1967, I think, is the show at its peak into 1795. with all due reverence to everyone who loves 1897, I think those early Barnabas days and everything leading up to the flashback to 1795, and these guys, and I'm noticing it's a lot of Ron Sproat, it's a lot of Malcolm Mormelstein, Joe Caldwell comes into the mix. Early on, Joe is writing, but he's not getting credits. I think he was writing on spec, and it was being submitted through Ron Sproat's name, and then he eventually gets a credit. Full-fledged, like, for instance, when Barnabas meets David in the old house for the first time, and he tells him about the room at the top of the stairs, and I want you to watch the sunrise with me. Joe Caldwell actually wrote that, but Ron got credit for it. So I don't know how that works. Again, I think it was being done on spec. They wanted to see how his scripts were playing, and that's how that worked. But the first time out, when Barnabas meets Maggie at the diner, what a great episode. I know Catherine has cited that as her favorite moment between her and Jonathan when she meets him for the first time. And Ron wrote that. The whole intro of her being scared in the hallway, the deserted hallway of the Collinsport Inn, and just his gentility, and really kind of playing it down and saying, I'm so sorry I startled you, and I just wanted a cup of coffee, and her being totally, he hoodwinks her, and she brings him in, and we're off and running.
It's I was just telling DJ before we started, I said these are the scariest episodes to me. When Barnabas was the big guy on the block. I mean, I love when they bring in the other vampires and the witches and the werewolves and these warlocks and all. That's great, but it's kind of like the old Universal cycle. When you start to take those individual monsters and put them into one thing, it's not scary anymore. It's more of an action piece or something like that, or suspense or something. But in these early days, it's very easy to look at this now, not when I was a kid, because I was utterly intrigued by Barnabas myself. He had all this power. Dogs were howling everywhere when he entered the scene. He was so like you said, the gentleman, the gentility of the man, and all of that. But now I look at it as almost like, it always kind of reminds me of Salem's Lot. Long before, it existed, the drafty old house, the age-old vampire, he's really slick. I mean, if you've read the book, not the movie, Court Barlow is very courtly and very charming, and there's a scene when he meets this guy. I think it's the Dunderhead. He meets him. It's very much the same. It only, like you said, you got this girl now trapped in a diner with somebody she doesn't know, but he's bad news. It's like a Hitchcock thing. The suspense, and does he leave the cane on purpose or does he not? It's full of good stuff.
And they're pulling from Dracula. We talked about this the other night in prepping for this. They are pulling directly from the Stoker novel. They're putting their own spin on it, and I'm sure that was Curtis's orders because he wanted the marauding Count Dracula. Again, we're lucky, I've said this in many shows, that he was in London working on Jekyll and Hyde, which, just a little side note, and it's funny that it actually gets an IMDb credit. That was supposed to be done with Jason Robards. And they started working on it. It was another director and another famous lady, not Billy Whitelaw, who did it with Jack Palance. They ran into some kind of scuffle. And Robards was replaced, and the woman was replaced, and Dan Curtis came in to take over that production of Jekyll and Hyde. But it actually, and I was like, wait a minute, can I actually watch this? And no, you can't because they didn't finish it. But it's funny that it has its own IMDb credit for something that wasn't finished. But that was what Curtis was working on at the time. And we mentioned before, while Frid ascertained, I think the person who cast me was Ron Sproat because we knew each other from college. Ron was pleasantly surprised when he saw Jonathan's headshot on the desk. But he said John was the furthest person away from me, and he said to the audience at a convention, I had submitted... Who?
Bert Convy.
Bert Convy. He was the one who had submitted Bert Convy. He wasn't thinking of Jonathan Frid. He was just thrilled when he saw John. And then I think that's probably when he pushed, is when he saw Jonathan in the stack. Is they thinking, oh, wait a minute, this is a good choice. So it was Ron who was pushing for. But I think they were going from a matinee idol perspective, because nobody thought this was going to be the character that we got. I mean, even in this storyline, you can see there's a tee up for Barnabas's imminent staking or inevitable staking, which is what they had in mind out the gate. But I love that first meeting at the coffee shop between him and Maggie. The dogs howling, him. I think he's sly about the cane, because he waits till her back is turned, and then he reaches over and gently hooks it on the other chair. So I do think he was being a bit of a sly puss, as Jonathan would put it. And it's got one of the best lines in that episode, when he says, Mrs. Stoddard has given me permission to live in the old house on the estate. And she goes, there's rumors about that place. People say it's haunted. And he said, I don't listen to those rumors, much less believe in them. And she says, well, that makes you very unique in this town. He says, yeah, and that's not necessarily a good thing. It sets you apart from other men. This is one of those things that, again, the disenfranchised and the gay audience was picking up on in 1967 with Barnabas. And again, that sad kind of faraway look in his eye, that is all coming from Jonathan. That's not on the page. Jonathan is infusing that on his own.
Yeah, talk about multifaceted. A multifaceted. You get all of that in this storyline. I mean, you get Barnabas as a villain, and I was telling DJ, it was very difficult to watch at points. Some of the things that he did to her were cruel, locking her in the coffin and using his powers along with other means of brainwashing. But then in other moments, you feel very sorry for him. Like when he says something going to be wonderful and safe here, and there'll be no tears and all of that. You can see him like yearning for that. It's rough.
Yeah. And there's also this slow burn. I mean, everything leading up to the kidnapping itself. He wants a portrait. Sam just happens to be an artist. Everything is working in Barnabas's favor. The fact that he follows her home and clearly attacked or attempted to attack another girl before he followed Maggie home. That great meeting between him and Sam and her in the house. And he's just playing it down. She's like, I had the sensation that somebody was following me all the way here. And, and he's just like, oh, well, let me go outside and see. Let me see if there's anyone out there. I mean, he's just playing it down. And he's also done his homework, because he realizes Sam is hard up for money. So $1,000 in 1967, what would that be now? It's probably like, I don't know, 5,000. What would the equivalent be to $1,000? When he offers him $1,000 to do the portrait. He's sly. He's really, really slick. He's really, really slick.
What is it? The scene where he's doing the portrait and something sets Barnabas off, and he looks away and he starts to sense some kind of movement or something from her. And he walks away, and Sam is painting, and he says, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you this way. We can continue if you like. And Sam said, no, I don't need you. Then he goes off, and Willie gets scared. Where did he go? How long's he been gone? All that buildup, all that tension. There was something I had seen that I had never, in the many years that I've watched Dark Shadows, I don't remember ever seeing this. It was horrifying, where it's Victoria and Maggie, when Maggie's been bitten.
Yes.
And he's gone for her. And he's the dog. You hear the growling outside, the usual growl, the werewolf growl and all that. Outside the French doors, and the shaking of the doors, and Victoria's screaming. And I think Joe or Mitch, is it Mitch Ryan that shows? Somebody shows
Mitch. She gets, she calls Mitch. Yeah.
Burke. I said to him, I've never seen this before. I don't ever remember, and this is terrifying. Like he was going to burst through those doors.
And it's all Stoker.
It's
This is
crazy.
all from the Stoker novel. She's Lucy. Maggie is Lucy. Everything they're playing out
Mm,
is from the initial bite,
mm,
when he, which, it's important to remember too, guys, that there was a strike going on when Jonathan joined. This is why he got preempted, and then they had to start filming. The cast was actually working Sunday through Friday, not Monday through Friday. They were doing 6 days in a row of shows. So it's funny, in a few episodes where Joan or Mitch, and Mitch had other issues going on, if they seem fatigued, it's because they were working. Were not getting a full weekend off. They had to go from Sunday in order to catch up and whatever Curtis was doing to pay and all of this stuff. They also were filming episodes out of sequence. So I think like the episode where they see Barnabas's silhouette. This is before the dog incident, where Vicky is babysitting, so to speak, and sitting with her, and the doors blow open, and we see the silhouette of the caped coat. That was actually filmed 3 days before, and then they had to go back and film the other. Everything was being done out of sequence for some reason. They were not on. And Jonathan had just got involved in all of this. He's just started, and the man is dyslexic. And you see some of the people that have been on the show for a year and a half, and they're having a hard time. So it's interesting to keep that in mind next time you go back and watch that they were really working their asses off, especially in a show where you could not stop. You had to keep going if something went wrong. So 6 days is a tall order.
yeah.
But I love that. I love the stuff. I love all of the stuff that they pull from Dracula. I love that again. The initial Vicky kind of gets in the way there when he's at the blue whale, and I'm trying to remember if that's the thing. The first time he bites her is when he leaves Sam alone. You were mentioning to work on the
Mm,
portrait. That's the first time and that's when
right.
he screws up his fangs. Which, if you watch, guys, you see him actually. He's told the story a million times, but when he comes in the doors, you can see he's kind of, and it's a little bit. His mouth is protruding, and he gets over to the bed and he does this, as he points out, this smart ass thing with the cane, where they were supposed to shoot Maggie's face through the cane. It doesn't quite work that way, and then he realized the fangs fell down, and you can see him literally do. And he just goes,
Right. He
which
has a
he
really big
preferred.
gaunt face too.
Yeah, which
Right.
he preferred doing. But then, next episode they were like, okay, gotta go in, gotta redo the whole thing over again because we paid a lot of money for those fangs and they have to see them. But it is fun to watch him doing
It's
that. It's like you guys, as he pointed, like a kid with bubble gum in school. He's just kind of going,
Have you ever, like, when you watch this, you get the sense of his actual, and I guess this is the genius of the writing, but also the facets that Frid put into the character, but you get the sense of his time, like a man out of his time. Like, he really, we end up becoming enamored of Barnabas and the hero and all of that, but we forget that he was from a century just not too far from the colonies. So he does view people in a sort of proprietary way. Willie, he beats the living hell out of Willie for something he thinks Willie did, and that the whole hook cane thing. And then with Maggie, he goes to her and he tells her, "It's hard for me to punish you when I see how lovely you are." And then something triggers her, and she starts to pull back and she starts screaming for her father. And this is the one, of course, where he locks her in the coffin. And you think to yourself, well, for a man of that era, for how the whole masculine feminine relationship or dynamic was, you could see where a man of that era would do that and how offensive it would be to somebody from this time frame. We don't have that at all in our we shouldn't in our mindset of treating a human being that way. But it's in his mind, it wasn't as it was harsh, but not necessarily I hate to say this, but would he, a man of that era, considered himself abusive? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I think that,
I think
I
it
think
was more
Anthony
out of the
mentioned
vampire
Julia and the
thing, though.
family. Oh, yeah.
I see. I always
It was crazy.
maintain when we see them in 1795, the fact that Jeremiah and Barnabas were like brothers because they were the same age.
Brothers.
Even though it was uncle nephew, I can. This is the fan geek in me. I can totally see Naomi really rubbing off on them, and they're kind of taking their viewpoint of life from Naomi, and not Joshua.
Mm-hmm.
And because they're so kind to Ben. Um,
Right.
it's
Well, even Victoria
yeah,
trying to help her, you know.
yes, exactly. I love that Catherine really gets to stretch her, and she always had a bigger arc. I mean, it's one of the things that Catherine doesn't get a lot of credit for because all of this stuff with Sam, um, and Roger and Burke, but it's not a leap of the imagination that they may have been envisioning this storyline for Alexandra originally. Because when she's rescued from Matthew Morgan's clutches and Josette's ghost comes to her and says, "Don't be afraid. You're going to be all right. Don't be afraid." And later on that night in her room with Elizabeth, she says, when I talked to Josette, I felt like I was talking to myself. And have you ever noticed,
Mm,
I think I look a little bit like her, which Elizabeth tries to
yeah.
dismiss. And I just have a feeling that the powers that be, meaning Leela and company, may have said, "Listen, Vicky was kidnapped by Matthew Morgan. She had to do all of the groundwork and legwork for saving David from Laura. Catherine had an A story. Let's have Catherine. And again, we need Mina and Lucy anyway, because Vicky doesn't get enough credit for the fact that watching these episodes, she's starting to put the pieces together that something isn't quite right, or that there are things that are happening to Maggie that
Yeah.
happened to Willie Loomis. The fact that he would be ill during the day and listless and fatigued, and yet at night he would spring back to life. She starts to kind of put those
Mm,
pieces together. Um, she says it to Dr. Woodard. She says it to Burke. And then when Barnabas decides to visit on a stormy night, casting the same silhouette that he did in front of Maggie's French doors, after he tells the story of Josette jumping off Widow's Hill, Vicky's like, you use the word bloodless. And I just find it interesting that you chose that word because of everything that's been happening with the animals and particularly with Maggie Evans. And he says, "You're a clever girl, Miss Winters.
mm-hmm.
Take heed that what's happening to Miss Evans doesn't happen to you as well." And she kind of gives him this look like, what is that supposed to mean? So
Yeah.
still, with them
Mm-hmm.
thinking he's going to get killed, clearly Vicky was going to be one of the people to figure this out.
I didn't realize too that it was during this time frame that we get introduced to, but also the origin of the famous music box. I didn't know that came from the Orient. And he has this
Yes.
lovely speech when he gives it to her about like me, it's cross not oceans of time, but it was very
This has
reminiscent
crossed
to
the
the
seas
line
as I've
used in
crossed the
Bram Stoker's.
centuries.
That's it. That's it. It reminded me of the Stoker, the Coppola version. I've crossed oceans of time to be, you know. It reminded me very much of that.
I am
But I
sure
thought I didn't
Coppola
know
was
that came from
watching.
the. Oh, you know, the thing about it is Barnabas is an interesting character. You know, the more you hear these things, the more that you wish that they would do, which I think Miss Parker did pretty well. They sort of would introduce more of these bits from his pre-vampiric but pre-modern time existence. Like I would have liked to have seen some of his travels. You know what he was like when
Sure.
he, met this Indian and all of that kind of thing. You know, interesting stuff.
Yeah, because a lot of that got thrown away later on. And then it's been pointed out that, we've heard so much about Josette. We do know that she jumped off Widow's Hill, but we don't, that
Mm-hmm.
now all of a sudden Barnabas becomes this key player in all of this. And it's been cited that moment when he finally kidnaps her, and I'm jumping the gun here because there's a lot of good story that happens before she actually goes to the old house, because all of the visits to Eagle Hill Cemetery are, again, it's when she flees the house after she's, and those great mood swings. Catherine is playing those mood swings, and no, there are a lot of young starlets at that time who would not have allowed themselves to have been made up the way Catherine was. She's got like no makeup on,
Yeah.
or a lot of makeup that's making her look lousy. The hair is all messed up, even at work. You know, when she goes into work the first time after being
Yeah.
bitten by Barnabas, she looks like a mess. Um, so she had no
Like
vanity
a
about
heroin
herself
addict
that
or
way.
something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. She has no vanity about herself that way.
And those scenes in the cemetery, aesthetically speaking, are some of my favorite uh, as far as the look of the show. When his eyebrows were all bushy and the makeup was all dark, so you saw his features more sunken in, and she looks all wild and crazy in the cemetery. He looked cool. The cape collar was still up, very firm, and the cane. They were visually amazing to look at.
And he's talking with his fangs in his mouth too for that entire, almost that entire sequence until they get in the mausoleum. He's got his fangs in his mouth the whole time. He had learned to kind of maneuver them that way. He was pretty good about that. But yeah, when she goes missing,
Yeah,
and then that's again just her wandering aimlessly until he finally comes through all the brush and the foliage and all that great makeup,
the
which I think
fog.
later on they probably thought, well, we can't do that, because there are things that happen in this storyline
In
where, well, the nightmare. I mean, that great nightmare sequence, which apparently is Dory Kavanaugh, who is the first Phyllis Wick that we see when Vicky gets transported back in time. They did some put-in shots, and then I think it's Dory is in the bed filling in for Catherine, and then we see Catherine in that wooded area with all of the kind of ripped white curtains, and there's the casket. And she does that little run around the fir tree, which Laura pointed out to her at a festival. She said, I love the way you did that little dramatic run around the fir tree. And she said, I couldn't go anywhere else. If I had, I would have wound up on the Collinwood set. So I kind of had to do that, just for dramatic effect. But that was the day that Catherine had a panic
Check,
attack,
please.
because they put her
Oh,
in that coffin for that scene, and I guess they left her there for a while, and she had a full-on panic attack. So there's all these great put-in shots of her looking at herself in the coffin, and they really get that skull effect. You have the skull with its mouth open
mm,
screaming, and then they cut to Maggie in bed and she's doing the exact same thing. That's where I say the show was at its best, because that, I wouldn't say it scares me now, but as a kid it certainly made me jump.
scares the hell out of me now. It didn't when I was a kid because I was so into the clothing, the look, the music, the cane, the ring. He was like a hero as a kid, even when he was. As an adult now, when I watch it, I think, Christ, this is creepy as hell. This show, the black. I'm telling you, credit to the black and white. Made it so much like the nightmare sequences. The old house looks so much more cobwebby and cold, and
Yeah.
uh, and then the whole thing when Maggie through the sickness, but then when Maggie just disappears, the tension that, to his credit, that Sam Evans, what's his name, Ford,
David Ford,
uh,
yeah.
the actor, I can never remember.
David,
He,
and
he he did a very good job of,
he
and
doesn't get
he
enough
had more
credit. He
Mitch.
doesn't get enough credit.
No, he looked like a lost father, like a lost, and then Barnabas is being nice to him. He's being nice to them and all of this stuff. It was like
Yeah, David and Joel.
crazy.
David and Joel have some really wonderful moments together. Because Maggie is all he
Agreed.
has. Maggie is all he has. He's lost his wife, and going back and
Deals
watching
with
some of
the
those scenes with David. Yeah,
is very touching. Some of them are, and just see the guys acting together. So many of us watch the episodes after Barnabas is introduced, forgetting that they were together and have storylines together and things like that in the past. But you watch Mitch Ryan in these episodes, and you watch David Ford, and you watch the Doctor, Dr. Woodard. It's a very, very, very good acting going on, trying to figure out what's going on with her, and
And we have fake
really
Dr. Woodard. We have number one Dr. Woodard. I forget the actor's name. The bald. I think he's going slightly bald, and he's very kind of clinical. And we get him for one episode.
A little bit of a wet shirt.
Then Robert Geringer comes in.
I love him. He's the old town doctor. Like he gives you that concerned, the doctor that everybody's grandmother swore existed when they were kids and could tell what was wrong with you by talking to you and all that stuff that no longer exists. He played that so all those things, all that tension, and
And it's just to point out another thing I noticed was concurrent to all of this, you've got the Elizabeth Jason thing going on. The further the real blackmail stuff, and then him wanting to be we're going to get married, and it's the last time we see Frank Garner. It's the last time we see her lawyer, and his name just flew out of my head. The actor that played him. I thought I had it in my notes, but I don't think I have it in my notes here. But interestingly enough, he went on to do All My Children, and he was married to Ruth Warwick, Phoebe, who then goes on to marry Louis Edmonds, Langley.
Oh.
So how's that for a little roundy? And his wife, John's in the other room at the moment, but his wife was Madeleine L'Engle, who wrote Wrinkle in Time. I did not know that, which is this classic children's book.
Mm-hmm. That scared me as well.
Wrinkle in Time. I'm trying to see some of the comments here.
That really scared me.
Yeah, Jessica, Robert Geringer definitely was the best of the three Woodards, or Woodward as Maggie refers to him, Doc Woodward, at one point.
Right?
A little slip there. But we also get Eagles Hill instead of Eagle Hill, and we get Widow Hill instead of. I thought a little interesting aside is when Maggie goes sleepwalking before she initially disappears. Dr. Woodard says to Sam, Sam, she could get hit by a car. She could even fall off the cliffs, which I thought was a little interesting tie to Josette.
Shades of Josette.
Yeah.
Shades of Josette. Yeah, for sure.
So I had forgotten that. I had forgotten.
And poor Willie tries so hard to keep her going, to keep things safe. And what time did he leave? Where did he go? Well, how long has he been gone? Well, what did he say to you? And Sam's like, look, I'm trying to work here. I'm trying to do this thing. And he's trying to save your daughter. It's
Yeah. Ugh. Is it Christina?
You.
Sorry, I missed a question there. I'll have John go back and find it. I saw Connard, folks. I know Connard is it Frank Jr.? Are they both Frank? Are they Frank and Frank, or is it I forget? I've got so many things in terms of father and son. Connard folks played Frank Garner, the son. So is it Richard Garner? I think it's Richard Garner is the father.
Let's see. Oh, I can't get my fingers to type.
Hey, sweetheart. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just turning to my notes here.
Somebody's saying hello.
Hey, Squeezy Wheezy, come here. I think when the scene that unnerves me the most that you mentioned earlier again is the dogs, because Vicky has already blocked Barnabas from getting in there once, and this second time it's like, okay, all bets are off. and we hear the dogs snarling, and she goes out again. I remember as a 12-year-old when the door slams shut to the bedroom, and you just hear the dogs getting louder, and I mean, it just sounds like she's being torn limb from limb in there.
Remember it harkened to sort of the David, and I thought this was actually kind of a tender scene. But when David runs into the old house because he hears the dogs,
Yes.
and Barnabas says, "They're only dog. Are you crying?" And there's some of those scenes with Barnabas and David early on were very kind of, in their own way, sweet. And it reminded me of that. Although the damn door shaking and all of that, I couldn't believe I didn't remember that today. But that was scary as hell. And of course, Victoria's panicking and screaming, and Frank Garner.
So it
His
is
brother was the
Richard.
original
Richard
partner,
was.
Garner and Garner.
That's it. Richard was the
So
dad.
Richard was
Frank
the
was the
original,
son.
and then Frank, son. Yeah, son.
Frank was the son. Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
you, I love Dark Shadows wiki, Dark Shadows fandom.
I
So
think
yeah,
Edie Lewis, if you were, I went back a few comments about. Did you mean Barnabas was being diabolical? I'm going to go out on a limb and that I definitely think it was being diabolical, but again, there were just so many traces of this sadness going on in there that's why we kind of got hooked in there, because if he had just been playing mean and unscrupulous, you know, he's very planned out.
Yes.
He is going. It's so contrived, everything that Barnabas is doing with Maggie. Um, when
yeah.
she has that final attack, and Dr. Woodard's like, "We got to take her to the hospital." That's a great moment. Don't leave her alone. Don't do this. Don't do that. And that scene where Catherine kind of like rises up out of the bed, and her body's contorting and she's gasping for air totally reminds me of Lucy in Langella's Dracula when she dies.
Oh yeah.
It's
Mm-hmm.
which that scene totally creeps me out when Lucy dies in Langella's Dracula. It's not as big with Maggie, but she kind of like you could tell that she's aspirating, and she falls
Yeah.
down on the bed, and the nurse runs out, and they go back in, and she's gone, and the window is open. And I forgot. I'm like, oh my God, she's just walking through the woods. So she's on the first floor. He's orchestrated, Barnabas has orchestrated all of this. And she's being led to the old house. She's slowly making her way to the old house of her own volition. It's not that he came in and swept her out.
Is Barnabas being diabolic thing? That's one of the best questions I think for the character and the show that there are. I think that the thing about it is, yes, he has very nasty points in this, but there are two ways of looking at it. As Peter says, in the writing, you cannot play deep-dyed snarling all the time. The audience loses interest. That's why kind of the Hammer Dracula films were always so Van Helsing-sided, because Dracula was this marauding beast. Whereas Dark Shadows, though, also we've discussed this before, there's almost, if you go back now, the timeline in Barnabas's transformation from sweet guy looking forward to getting married to and also very pressured son. I mean, his father had the thumb on Barnabas. Oh, Barnabas was a very dutiful. His father had a thumb on him, but then from that to cursed and everything falling apart in his life, the timeline is insane. So you could see, and then being chained up and not killed, and sitting in a box for 200 years in some kind of strange hibernation that, I mean, honestly, if you think about it, like he went from this to that immediately. We don't know what he understood of that. Am I dead? Am I in hell? Is this going to be it? I could see where he would be pissed when he got out, and I could see where he would be full of trauma and wanting to hurt the world and thinking from this point on, I am not going to worry about anybody but because in the 1795 timeline, He was constantly trying to protect everybody. He was trying to save his mother, trying to save Sarah, trying to save Josette, trying to save Victoria. None of that worked out for him as far as he knew. He lost everybody he tried to save. Now he's awake in a new century thinking, well, I'm not doing that again. Shit on that, I'm worried about me from now on. So I get it. Like, I
Yeah.
get it.
And this
Why
is
he
why
is the way he is.
I've said, if you're going to watch, if it's a newbie, I don't know if I could convince them to watch from episode 1 all the way through, but if they want Barnabas, I would say start with 1795. Give them a little background as to what's going on. Yes, pay attention to Vicky, but you really want to focus on Barnabas, Josette, Jeremiah, Angelique. You need to focus on that. When you get to the episode where they chain him up, shut it off and turn on from episode 210. Because now you're going to know going in what his
Yeah.
backstory is. It's going to make a lot more sense to you why he's acting the way he's acting.
Good idea.
Right. Agreed. He's very drastic, shall we say, and
Yeah.
and with good. I'm not justifying kidnapping and brainwashing, but with good reason. He's very drastic with bloody good reason. He has every reason to be so, and it makes you so sad for him when
Yeah.
he's appealing to Maggie Evans. He's appealing to her to be like Josette, and he's listening to this. He's searching desperately. It makes the character that much sadder, you know.
Jessica says that using the adjective diabolical also gives that cliche Snidely Whiplash energy. You know, the giant mustache villain who ties the girl to the tracks. You must pay the rent.
Oh, right. Of course, right. Yeah. And there were a few villains like that on the show. Jonathan even cited that. He would not name them. I think I know who he was referring to. I can think of at least two. I'm not going to name them off the top of my head. But they were the predictable. That they were predictable villains, where Barnabas was not predictable. Especially in this storyline, what's he going to do? Is he going to be mean? Is he going to do what's this really keeps you on the edge of your seat? Yes. What do we got here?
This is a good point. So this is Kay Renee.
Yes.
At one point, Willie asks Barnabas to have mercy on Maggie. Barnabas turns on Willie, saying that there was a time when he begged for mercy and didn't get it, so he will not show mercy.
Yeah, Renee, I've said, if you took that clip, and that's jumping a little bit ahead in this storyline, but
sorry.
no, that's all right. No, that's fine. It doesn't have to be chronological, but if you played that clip and then show him begging Ben Stokes to come and kill him in the mausoleum, and then Angelique puts the kibosh on that. She, destroys the stake and the hammer. And then he goes to Joshua at the end and says, you realize you have to kill me and put me out of my misery. And, this is why we know Joshua had a heart. He chains him up. Because this comes up again in this storyline. My father could have shown me mercy. Oh, no, it comes up Jason McGuire when they bury, my father could have shown me mercy. He thought what he was doing was merciful, but it was no act of mercy. So if you played those two clips after Jonathan Barnabas says, why should I show her any mercy? It puts it more into perspective as to why he's feeling the way he's feeling. When he gets her to the house, I love the fact that either Willie or him took a hairdressing, course, because all of a sudden she's got her sausage curls. She's got those big sausage curls and the big ribbon in her hair.
That's funny.
And then we're up in the room. And of course, yes, my favorite prop, out comes the music box, which is taped on the wrong side. Somebody broke it and put the masking tape on the wrong side so you can see where it should be taped. And it's the only time we see, and this is what gets me. Somebody did this with a picture and I saved it. Oh, she doesn't look like Josette. Oh, she doesn't look like Josette. I'm not saying she looks exactly like Josette, but they do a close-up of Catherine, and they lapse fade into the portrait, and it's the same big brown almond eyes.
Right.
I'm not saying she looks exactly like her, but it's not that she doesn't look anything like her.
Bob Pierce wants us to know
The
that
fact that this guy is 200 years old slips their mind. Excuse me, gentlemen, I'll be right back.
Oh,
no
sure.
problem. Bob wants us to know that his favorite music box theme is the original, though he likes both of them.
Oh, Robert Farnon. Yeah, the Robert Farnon one. Yes, and it's great that we have that. Bob said that.
Yes.
Bob. It's great that we have that now, guys. If you want the original Josette's music box, it was composed by Robert Farnon for The Prisoner, an episode called Dance of the Dead. You can hear it in that episode. And then it was put on an album he did called Drum Dramatics Number 2. It's part of a very long track that's a little ominous. And the music box, that original music box theme, is in there all the way through. It's interesting. Sybil Weinberger took that and, for the most part, cut it off. It does have a definite ending, but for some reason they cut it. They cut the ending off and just did it as a loop. And the only time we ever hear the ending of that music box is when Vicky is listening to it, sitting in the drawing room of Collinwood looking out the window, and David kind of says, "You're acting really strange, Miss Winters." And that's the only time we ever hear that music box all the way through. But you can look it up on YouTube. Robert Farnon, Drum Dramatics, and a little piece of useless information. He is the uncle of Charmian Carr, who played Liesel in the film version of The Sound of Music. That was her uncle, and he did a million albums. He's a wonderful composer. I've heard some of his other music, and it was really, really good. He was a wonderful composer.
What did I miss earlier about Madeline Lengel?
Oh, that Richard Garner, Liz's lawyer, the actor who played that. That was his wife.
Oh, interesting.
In real life, that was his wife. Welcome back.
Get it?
Yes. Yeah. There's also been interesting. Someone posed this question on Facebook earlier today. What was going on with Barnabas and Maggie in her bedroom, and a scene that comes up in Josette's room, which we're about to get to, and they're wondering, the subject of rape came up. Now, if you go by Anne Rice, you know, they are defunct from the waist down. The orgasm is the bite.
Right.
That is how they orgasm. Even Lamar talked about this. That is how you have an orgasm when you're a vampire.
Not true in True Blood, etc.
No. I mentioned last week we were talking about Blood for Dracula because we just lost Udo Kier, who I always wanted to meet. And when Udo was making that movie, and this is before Interview with the Vampire, the first time he bites the first daughter in that film, and he said they had to recut the film. But you can notice it as he's getting jazzed up, because he needs to know that she's a virgin, even though she's really not. He's going to find that out a few minutes later, because the blood has to be virgin blood. But he said, I started working my lower half with my hand, and you can see his arm. You know, you can see his arm working, but they had to recut it because they said this is going to give us. It's an X-rated movie because of the blood, but it's not that kind of an X-rated movie. But that was Udu's take on it, was that I'm revving myself up, I'm rubbing my lower parts, but then when the orgasm is the bite. So, you know, take that for what you will. And Anne Rice went along with that theory as well, because I think, trying to remember when Interview with the Vampire came out.
I don't see that. I mean, this is an actor's point of view. I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I don't see that as rape as congruent to Barnabas. Barnabas is like violent, perhaps, you know, with Willie and all of that side. He was a gentleman. He considered himself a gentleman. He was deeply in love with Josette, and I think he would have treated women, which sounds crazy that he's brainwashing her, but I think that I don't see that violent sex is a part of the character.
Yeah.
I just don't see that. I mean, biting her and taking over, because he kept saying, she must come. What was the big thing? She must come to me willingly.
Willingly.
He said that a few times. I want her to come to me willingly. So I think that sexually, I just don't see that in the guy who's traveling back and forth in time to save people, and eventually the hero of the family. I just don't see that as congruent. Nicholas Blair, sure, I think he would have raped Maggie.
It's a violation. I mean, it's a
Because we don't even know if he
they're
was a demon
exchanging
or what.
fluids. They're exchanging fluids, so there is a kind of a
Right.
violation in a sense.
Yeah.
Christian
Yeah. Right.
says, this is Christian. He says, as George Takei would say about Blood for Dracula, oh my. Also,
Oh my.
You'll say a lot of that if you watch Blood for Dracula, but in a good way from my perspective. It's
Joe D'Alessandro alone is the reason to watch that movie.
that's worth the price of admission. Yes,
It's a fine gagoot.
that's right.
E.D. Lewis wants to point out that even though he says he'll show no mercy, there really are oftentimes idle threats because he had many chances to kill Maggie
Yes,
and he never followed through on them.
yes. Well,
Oh, yeah.
there's the conscience. There's the conscience. Something is. I mean, come on. He could have bled Maggie dry the first night.
Yep.
And then there's also the idea of the slow burn, and doing it with finesse, which is, he says that with Julia later on in Burke Devlin. He says, I know how to finesse people, which can also be a little bit stupid. I mean, it was like, dude, all you had to do was just drain her and that would have been it,
He loved to play with his food. Wait for it.
He loved to play with his food. There you go. There you go.
And Dark Shadows is genius in its writing, in that there are very few. Well, I shouldn't say very few, but the top three are not like you said, the conscious thing, and I think again they are drawing off of Naomi, what he took from the mother.
Yeah.
Because the father was merciless, and I think he described his father as relentless or cold and merciless with her. Having grown up seeing that, I think that he did have that pull in him,
Yeah.
to the desire to be kind. Again, taken from him by Angelique. And
Yes.
in Night Whispers, he says something to Willie about, because Willie says, whatever the demon is that has Willie, says something about you. Everything that's gone on with his family is because of you, because of your mistreatment of Angelique. And he says, I didn't put that hatred in her heart. So, here's a guy who is capable of love. And I agree with you, what you said about the vampiric influence, too. When you're a vampire, you're not yourself.
Well, you're rabid. You've been bitten by a bat, so you're rabid, and plus, it's not a regular bat, or he would have died. It's a demon bat. So he's bipolar. He really is bipolar. When this thing flares up in him, it's causing a chemical imbalance.
Renee wants to go on record saying Barnabas was a gentleman who would not have raped the women he wanted to become Josette.
Sure.
Because he elevated them to the perfect woman.
Thank you, Renee.
He worshipped and had a deep romantic love for Josette.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with you fully, Renee, because I do believe that he did love Josette. That's a whole other episode, which mixes into here, but still, I do believe that he loved Josette. It's important to mention here. What do I have this?
Yeah, I agree.
I love the fact that David sneaks into that. First of all, they've kidnapped her and they never locked the friggin' door. She's allowed to roam wherever she wants to in the house. People are coming in and out. It's like a 24-hour IHOP. The old house. So David comes in.
What the hell was that?
He's looking for the portrait.
It was Burke and her. Was it Burke and her father, or Burke and
Joe
Haskell?
I think it's Burke and Joe. And
they're walking out the door after Barnabas is like, well, Willie couldn't have possibly been involved. They're walking out the door, and he goes, did the floorboard just creak? Is somebody walking upstairs?
It's Burke. Yeah,
it's like,
Burke.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
It makes you worry. Is he going to kill them both? That's great, too.
We've talked about that. Really, if he wanted to, he could have taken any of these people. Of course, it would have aroused more suspicion. How many people are going up to the old house and disappearing? But then she's allowed to. There's no lock on the door. She's waltzing around with the music box. I mean, first time David comes in looking for the portrait, and Barnabas catches him, and I love the fact that he sits David down and says, "Now, David, you must get over this Josette fantasy." And you go, "Pot kettle black."
Right? Come on, man. We need you to try a little harder.
You know,
Yeah.
that makes me laugh.
Well,
That makes me giggle.
mentions the ghost, and I think David talks to him about the ghost of Josette and all of that. He keeps playing off of this ghosts aren't real and all of this. It's interesting to me because he becomes frightened of Sarah's ghost. He gets very edgy about that. But also, there's a line in Salem's Lot with Rob Lowe when they meet the vampire, and it says, "I hear there's ghosts up in that house." And Rutger Hauer looks up and goes, "Ghosts? No ghosts. No, no ghosts." It reminds me very much of these scenes where Barnabas is trying to dissuade people that there's anything supernatural going on around them and don't be ridiculous and all of that kind of stuff. It's interesting to me. I love those
Yeah,
scenes.
it creaks.
But there he is
The
being
house
judgy
just
again.
creaks, and I've gotten used to it. That's what he tells Burke.
Yeah, the wind. It must be the wind and all of this. Yeah. Uh-huh.
I pay very
Ghosts.
little. I pay very little attention to it anymore. But still, every time somebody else shows up, Sheriff Patterson shows up, and the door is wide open. The door is wide open to the old house. He just walks in, and it's like, okay, where is she? We all want to know too. Like, that's the thing with with a reboot. If they were to reboot it, which we're not against here, it would be to see the other rooms of the house and where she could have been.
Oh,
Where might she have been if she wasn't in Josette's room?
please build on those tunnels that she escapes.
Oh, we're gonna get to
I
that.
beg for
Hold
it.
that, hold that. We're gonna get
Oh,
to that. Hang on. We're gonna get to that. Um, what was the other thing? Oh, and of course this is where we hear about Dr. Hoffman, the best man in his field.
yeah.
There's that, and
What?
uh, it would take 6 weeks. I think it's like 6 weeks later until we actually see Dr. Hoffman, and then it comes back around to, well, Julia Hoffman. We're gonna send her to Wincliffe Sanitarium, and she really wants to take on the case until, because when Barnabas steals the blood samples, that's another great, when he ransacks the office, and
Hmm.
that's another really great moment during the kidnapping storyline. When replacing the slides, a delicate little flower painted on glass. Uh,
I love that of them. That's what as a kid, that kind of language, his voice, the deliberate, the formality of Barnabas at first. He did feel like a guy from another time. Like there was nothing, and yet at the same time, it wasn't. And I love Lugosi. It wasn't like Lugosi was a little bit like Fred said. It was like watching a ballet. The movements were slow. The movie was, but Fred had that same regality or regal sense, but wasn't moving slow. He was, it was great. You felt he was like a vampire, sneaking into that office and doing
yes,
things at night and replay. He was always ahead of you, always ahead of them, always ahead of them. It was great.
yes. The scene between Burke and Dr. Woodard, you
Lovely.
mean, Ed? The one between Burke, and poor Mitch was really that's when Mitch was starting to spiral. And you can tell because he's
Uh,
really not. And it's the classic blooper of, well, hey, maybe when you examine the blood under the microphone, um, which Dennis Patrick,
Classic
Dennis,
Darkshadows.
Dennis Patrick heard on the other side. He's like, we went to commercial, and he said, under the microphone. And without missing a beat, Mitch said, "Well, you got to hear what the little bastards are saying, don't you?"
I wouldn't trade Dark Shadows for the world. I tell you, it brings me so much
No.
joy
Oh my God,
watching.
yes.
Uh,
But yeah, you can notice that Mitch is
it
going
really
up a
is.
lot. Mitch is definitely, but he was doing a Broadway show. while he was doing Dark Shadows, and he said afterwards, he said, I don't recommend burning it at both ends because obviously the alcohol he thought was helping him to kind of maybe even himself out. And eventually, I mean, Catherine, I can tell this. Catherine told the story when I had her on Mac and Chat. They couldn't find him, and they went down to a barber shop, and he had a mohawk. He had gone in and had a mohawk done during the day, and I think it was Robert Costello who found him and said, hey, I'm Cochise.
Oh, God.
And they tried to film. They tried to film, apparently, and Leela Swift even recommended getting like a main cap, one of those kind of long, with the,
Oh, how funny.
and they were like, they're like, it's done. It's done. We can't. And I must point out Leela is doing a lot of these episodes, and I think she's doing a damn good job. Plus, she's making the show visually very interesting. Go back and look at a lot of the shots.
Mm-hmm.
She is really trying to make the show look extremely interesting from a visual perspective. And I don't think Leela gets enough credit.
Look, with the sets, I mean, shoestring budget, those sets took you places. The camera, everything. So you're absolutely right. It left nothing to me. We joke about things, but it left nothing to me to be desired. That show had it all. And poor Mitch Ryan, it's so tragic because I said this before. I should love to have seen the dynamic between his Jeremiah or his
Yes.
Burke Devlin as the show moved forward and Barnabas. That would have been far more tense. I think more
The machismo
than it was. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think you would have Barnabas as an audience. We would have felt Barnabas
having
more
that
under threat than we did with him.
That square-jawed kind of all-American bad boy up against this very not a feat. That's not the right word, but this very proper Englishman, as it were, and that the juxtaposition of that would have been really, really cool.
Wonderful to see.
One other thing about Mitch that we have a very good inside scoop on was that one day he didn't show up to the set and he was at the home of a very well-known silent film to early film actress, the famous Garbo. And so, yes, he was a lover of Garbos.
It was, but this was told at my first festival, 1990, and it was Violet Wells and Ken McEwen, and the guy's name just flew out of my head. He was not a director; he was a producer on the show. Not Nick Besnick, because he worked behind the scenes on the cameras. It'll come to me. But he said, he would be late. He'd be late getting to the studio, and so we knew he was having this liaison. So he said, I had to get on the phone. Dan made me get on the phone and call, and it would be, he's on his way.
He's on his way.
He's on his way. And, Mitch would...
He's almost there.
He's almost there.
I promise he's coming.
It doesn't sound good. She didn't want to be completely left alone then, eh?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But it was sad to see Mitch go. And then he disappears, and Joel, they had to give Joel Crothers all of his lines. Because we don't see Mitch until the day after this storyline ends. But we'll get to that. One of those great moments is, again, when they're filming these 6-day shows, poor David Ford gets raked across the coals. It's that moment when he's come to get his materials. And he's up with Maggie. Willie is up in the room with Maggie, and they cut back down, and David has the script in his hand. And Jonathan leans in as to say, they're on us, they're back on us. And he very quickly puts the script behind his coat. But it was one of those weeks where they had been filming, and I think he just... Well, Jonathan Jonathan says in one of his MPI videos, not that bad, but he was making a costume change. Maybe they were putting the cape coat on him in June the War, and he said, I had my script in my hand, and it was getting down to the wire, and she's going, Jonathan, just go, tip, 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 tip. I said, I threw the script on and I walked in with my head up high. I just threw the script out on the floor and made this grand entrance because he needed a little refresher of his lines.
It should be noted, Jessica brings up that Cy Thomasoff sets are really so autumnal and really stand out in these episodes.
Oh man, absolutely, absolutely.
Another character.
No doubt.
Another character.
Homes, growing up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
yes,
another
indeed.
character.
I love the old house still.
Always. Recently, I should have saved it for this. Somebody found on one of the groups a side shot of the old house in its glory that we'd never seen before. And I think it's the owner is standing on the lawn, and it's not where the portico is. It's the one of the sides that just has all the columns. It's more the square side. But it's this never before seen photo. And somebody posted, I said, oh, that's because I love the old house. I love the old house. So anything that comes up about Spratt Mansion, I'm always really, really excited. But this is where it's getting interesting to that point of where she hears the voices downstairs and it's starting to trigger things in her. And she goes to run and she knocks over the vase, which happens prior when Sheriff Patterson comes to question Barnabas. And all of a sudden the music box goes off upstairs. And you really see Barnabas kind of fumbling. Oh, that's a family music box. I've been trying to, and the mainspring is given too much attention about. I always think of Ed Norton. I want to hear Barnabas saying, the amateur sprocket is causing interference, which in turn is causing a disturbance of the flow of the Dynaflow. I always picture Barnabas, totally going into Ed Norton mode.
I don't think Gary was here last week when we talked about this, but he said, what happened to the sets? I know you mentioned that some of them showed up on other ABC projects.
Yeah, Gary, there was I forget which fan. It was an Uber fan. It might have been Walter. Oh, gosh. He's in 2 documentaries. Is it Walter Miller? I want to say Walter Miller. He was a studio kid that was there like every day. Someone said he must have cut school every day because he was there pretty much 7 days a week. And
Walter Mitty. No, not Mitty.
Not Mitty.
Just kidding.
No, Walter. I think it's Walter Miller.
Jessica.
He was told that they were at a garbage lot. And so him and his father ran to see if they could salvage any of them, but the lot had already been cleared. Truth to tell, they were put into storage, and you can see some of them on Ryan's Hope. I think the Collins Mausoleum was reutilized on One Life to Live. The stained glass mirror, I believe the one that we see near the toy room, is in an episode of Ryan's Hope. There's a bunch of them. The doors to the foyer, not the doors to Collinwood, but the doors to the drawing room were also used on One Life to Live, I believe. So they were repurposed. I'm sure they're long gone now, but they were repurposed throughout the 70s and the early 80s. And you just have to look online for some of these soap operas because people are posting them. You may come across them. Someone did come across the stained glass window and posted pictures of it.
That's very cool.
So, yeah. If you look hard enough, they are out there.
You said that was on Ryan's Hope?
Ryan's Hope and One Life to Live. Well, Ryan's Hope was filmed in the same studio.
Because
they took over.
There's that stained glass window over the bar that they show. I wonder if that was it.
This is, I think, the one that was in the upper foyer.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, I think it was in the upper foyer. Anyway, when Barnabas realizes that she's obviously tried to make an escape, and poor Willie is trying to protect her, and he's saying, "Please, Barnabas, don't do anything." I dropped the vase. I did it. You feel so bad for Willie, and he orders him out of the room, and you tried to leave me. You tried to leave me. You must never do that again. Never, never, never. And he walks right into the camera, and you hear Maggie scream. And this became the subject of conversation on the board. That's why they said, like, was he raping her? And I'm like, I think he probably just gave her,
to scare her.
A throat throttle. Maybe he bit her. He might have done something physical, but again, they leave it to the audience to decide what Barnabas did there. But then she finds the pipe.
So
Go ahead, Michael.
some of that too, I think, I think they want you to believe, vampires with these sort of preternatural ability to screw with your mind a little bit, because there are things that he said to Willie in these episodes. Even when Julia Hoffman says, "Well, what do you think? You could think she could get you free of this," and he says, "Well, if you're thinking of yourself, you'll never be free of me." And when they wanted to, Willie's talked about trying to kill him, that you go to do it, you just can't. That they throw at them some sort of projection into their head that makes them look much more frightening than perhaps they really are. You feel sometimes when he talks about this stuff that he's doing something to them supernaturally that
Yeah.
we couldn't get our head around, or something like that. That's what I think.
Yeah. And it's been pointed out that the music box is you're back. That the music box is, again, the music is part of the hypnosis. He's using the music. That's part of his hypnosis in terms of keeping her brainwashed.
That makes sense.
So this was a device that had been used in old movies. Offhand, the names don't come to mind, but this using music as a device, and that this was his main way. Aside from the fact that some of him had been infused into her bloodstream to keep her under his, wears off.
I know I've said this before, but as far as Dark Shadow's impact on television now, the television series The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, there's a couple of episodes where Miranda Otto's character is put under. She marries Reverend Blackwood, Father Blackwood, who is the head of their coven, and it centers around a music box that he plays constantly to keep her under this Stepford wife type spell, which I was told by one of the writers of the series that they had lifted that directly from Dark Shadows. The Maggie Evans Barnabas kidnapping thing was lifted directly. There was no apologies. We stole that from Dark Shadows. So that whole segment is this whole music box thing.
There's a similar device in a movie with Patty Duke called She Waits from the 70s, which was a novel that has a Josette type thing going on, and Art Wallace was asked to do the script for that film, and I thought, he had to be doing he was doing a Guyon twister, because he had the music boxes in there, and Art was gone long before Barnabas Collins came into it, but I'm sure he was watching and probably kept that and used that as a device in She Waits, because Patty is going through a very Maggie Josette thing in that movie and in that story. So I thought, I wonder if Art put that in there as a little ball twister. But shortly after that episode, Maggie finds the pipe. Now she's seeing things that remind her of her real life. And of course, you got to laugh. This belongs to someone, and I know who it belongs to, and I've got to get it back to them. And she just waltzes out, the dress, she's got the dress hiked up on her hand, and she walks out of the old house. And Barnabas has ordered Willie to bring her downstairs. And they both go batshit crazy, or we must. Okay, now she's walked all the way into Collinsport in this white 18th century dress with her hair up. Clearly, this had to be a bad night, because, if you were going to do a parody, it would be hysterical to just have her walking past people, walking into town and walking past people. But that moment when she shows up outside the big bay window, while Sam is painting. That's another one where as a kid I was like, oh my God, he's going to find her. He's going to find her. And he goes to run out. And by the time the camera comes back around, she's gone. But again, it's not that Barnabas got her. It's that he's beckoned her back to Eagle Hill Cemetery. And now we're talking about that great moment where he says, I have to punish you. And when she initially meets him, there he is standing near the mausoleum, and you just see him over the shoulder. And she slowly walks to him, and up goes the hand, and he starts throttling her. We cut to commercial. We're in the mausoleum, and he's cajoling her, and again, as you pointed out, he starts to be tender again. You're so beautiful, and maybe there's no reason for me to punish you tonight. Until she makes the mistake of pulling out the pipe.
That's what Bob just wrote, was pop, pop your pipe.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
That's it. Pop.
Yes. Now, what happens here, I think, is brilliant. Because, again, nobody else was doing this on any other soap operas. He grabs her. She faints in his arms. He opens the secret panel, and they wait. They wait. You're kind of like, oh, they're really kind of like meandering on the secret door. Because Jonathan has gone onto another set. Catherine has been put into the coffin. Notice, we don't see Jonathan's face. We only hear him say, this is where you will stay until I come for you. And you don't see anything but his hands. Take a good look at the hands. They're not his. They're his stand-ins. Jonathan is off to the side with a makeshift coffin where they've put a camera through to do that great shot from Maggie's viewpoint of the coffin being closed on her. So it's all sleight of hand. It's all sleight of hand. But that's Jonathan's stand-in lowering the lid of the coffin. And if you have the pink bubblegum cards, you can see Jonathan stand-in. We all thought it was Timothy Gordon. And I believe the guy's name is Alfred DeLay. And it's funny because you see her in the coffin screaming, and the guy's kind of like this with his face, and you're going, that's not Jonathan Frid. He's got a pug nose. It was his stand-in.
That's funny.
That great Romanesque nose.
And you can also see that he has hairy hands where Jonathan does not. But how clever of them to be like, all right, we'll do it like this. We'll just create a faux coffin, and that's what we'll... and they just cut back and forth, and it's terrifying. It's a really terrifying moment.
That's hard to watch. That's hard to watch.
Yeah. Also because, what's interesting is that he doesn't really lock the coffin. In reality, she could have just opened the lid and gotten out. When Willie comes to fetch her, like, they should have at least had a lock on it, and because it's like, well, geez, she could have at least just opened the lid and gotten out. Unless Barnabas put her in some kind of a trance.
Yeah.
To keep her in there. That's possible. But this is where the story starts to break and shake, and she comes to it. And this is where Joe Caldwell comes in, and I believe this is where unless I'm wrong, this is where he officially starts to get writing credit. It's when she realizes, I'm someone else. And she's looking in the vanity, and she slams the music box shut, and she goes, I'm Maggie Evans. And I love Joe's style because Maggie has gotten very sharp. She's gotten very sharp, and now she's going to play into it. When she's called to come down, she's acting all aristocratic and, and the lady of the house. And And I think it's where he shows her the jewelry. So he shows her the necklace that she's going to wear, and he's explaining what their life is going to be like. And then she manages to sneak down. He looks at Willie and says, you've got some work to do. I want that work done immediately. And she sneaks down to the coffin room, and that's where she sees the 2 coffins being made. And Willie catches her, and she's still trying to play into all of this, and she's like, I'm the mistress of this house. I'm, and Willie's not buying it. Willie is totally not buying it. And that's where she breaks down and says, yeah, I know who I am. I know who I am, and you've got to get me out of here.
Okay. So that comes back to haunt them in the audio dramas. Maggie does remember, and they actually, she and Willie form a tight bond over those moments, because she remembers that Willie tried to save her, and she remembers that, and they kind of break off on their own for a little bit. And Barnabas in the audio drama comes to her and says, "Well, you don't understand. There was more to it than that, and I've since tried to change and make up for that." All kind of, but it's interesting. She comes back and hits them hard. So it is. This is when the spike comes into it, and he tells her, "You shut up. Don't you say a word. Let me handle it." When she tries to stake Barnabas with literally a railroad spike.
Yeah, right. Because she tries in that moment. Catherine is fierce. He's like, I can't do it. She's like, I can do it, and then we'll both be free.
Yeah.
She even offers him the jewelry.
Hmm.
She's got the necklace, and she offers him. She's like, look, this is worth thousands, and it's yours. Just let me get rid of him.
Yeah, very tense
That's a
moment.
really, really great moment. And then what I find interesting, a little typical Dark Shadows, he shows her the wedding dress that she's been wearing all this time. It's in the portrait. And then they put her in this other umpire uh, gauzy dress, which Catherine was not fond of. Um, and that's when he's taking her downstairs and says, it's almost like the end of House of Dark Shadows, and it's, well,
Yeah.
I can't be here. I'm not allowed to be here when he makes you his bride. I remember watching this Valentine's Day week on the VHS tapes on my lunch hour, 6th grade, and I'm scarfing down Entenmann's Valentine's Day cake, and I'm watching this scene where she realizes that obviously there's a window down there somewhere because we see the sunset. Um, and she kneels down and she picks up the silver spike again, and she's so close. She's so close, and then he wakes up. And that's another great moment. Him just in the coffin, with the fangs. And he's really doing a toothy
Somebody
fang thing.
hurt. Yeah. His rebuke is interesting too. Someone could get hurt. This is sharp, Maggie, or whatever it is he says. He's backing her up into the corner while he's. It's great.
Because he tried to trip her up the night before. When she's
Hmm.
playing the whole thing, and she's about to walk out of the room, and he goes, Maggie, and she goes, "Yeah, who are you talking about?" And he's like, "Oh, someone who doesn't matter, and they won't matter anymore." Um,
Dun, dun, dun.
yeah. I mean, all of this stuff that happens in these moments is so great. It's important to mention, and I don't know if the guy has uploaded it. There were several times over the years that Dark Shadows was preempted for news. Some of the stuff is not on the DVDs. Now, someone correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if this was restored for the DVDs, but she drops the spike. They play the theme, come back, and we hear Barnabas go, "You still haven't answered my question. What were you doing with this tool?" There's 45 seconds of dialogue that's missing from that scene because it was preempted with something having to do with the Vietnam War. Now, there's a guy who's been going on to the groups because he owns a lot of this stuff. If there's anyone, does this exist? does that for the script exists. The dialogue, someone has a page of the dialogue, but I don't know if it's surfaced. The dialogue that was cut out for the news preemption. So if anybody knows about that, because I don't remember it being on the DVDs, maybe I'm wrong. But there's 45 seconds of dialogue that's missing that Barnabas has with her before the scene that we see it the way we saw it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Oh no, that would be great to see. That's a
Yeah.
very scary scene, a very frightening, very tense moment in the series.
And Willie putting his
Hmm.
life on the
And
line for
I'd
her.
like. Oh, it's another thing that goes to show that theater actors were so much better utilized in this series. A classically trained actor like Fred uh, gets you to feel that anger, the tension, but so smooth and so sleek as he's telling it, and the intense emotion. I think that getting the theater actors to do that was prime move.
Gary has a question. Were there ever an episode of DS that didn't air or was skipped over?
That, it's funny offhand, Gary. I don't know if there was one that was ever skipped over. I think they all aired, but there were these preemptions
And there
in
was also
terms of
the quality of the episodes. What was Masters versus Kinescopes?
right, right. There are, I mean, one of the penultimate episodes that we're about to mention is the first half exists in Kinescope, and then luckily the master exists. But I don't know if any were skipped over. I don't believe so. And then, no, I don't recall Willie grabbing her ass. So I don't know. Did he? I'll have to go back. I don't remember Willie grabbing her by.
Christian is asking. He says, "Is that when Willie tried to save her by grabbing her bum a bit?"
I don't.
Well, can you blame Willie?
Can you blame Willie? Look. I mean, that the desperation is going. Look how beautiful she is, and Johnny. I don't want to look at her. I don't want to look at her. Um, that's a great scene. That's a really really great tense moment. Plus the fact that Barnabas is led upstairs to talk to Vicky. Vicky notices the music box, and I love anything from the past. Now
Seed has been planted.
a light bulb has gone off in Barnabas's head. Even though he's not totally done with
Mm.
Maggie, there's like, okay, let's file this away somewhere. Um, and then of course Maggie being locked up, which again I think Catherine shows a lot of guts. She will not kowtow to him.
Hmm.
Screams right in his face.
Hmm.
I'm Maggie Evans. She really, really, she's having none of it. She's having none of it.
Which harkens back to the character the way she was in the very beginning before all of this. That when she had that weird wig and she was tough talking, kind of a canny
Yeah,
sort of local waitress
yeah,
thing.
yeah. She's not going down without a fight, which is what I like. What I really, really like about this. And then of course we've got Sarah the friendly ghost showing up, uh, which is another great cliffhanger. And you're wondering, is this in Maggie's mind? It's a little bit like Bill Malloy when Vicky gets trapped in the room, and they're wondering, what did she really see Bill Malloy? And then they find the seaweed on the floor, and in this case it's the doll, because she leaves the doll, which I think that's Willie. Willie is
Hmm.
like, where did you get that? You know, and this is where Willie really starts to feel bad, because she is going out of her mind. When she's standing there aimlessly singing London Bridge and talking about her special secret friend. And I love that moment between her and Sarah where she says, if you see my big brother, don't tell him you saw me. He doesn't like anyone to come down here.
Yeah.
And the fact that she's so afraid Sarah's going to get caught because she hears Barnabas and or Willie coming down the stairs. And, it's like, how
Hmm.
did they not see her? How did she get out?
Hmm. And then Sarah's throwing the ball right in front of the
Yeah,
cell. She's
yeah,
catching a ball or something, and she's ignored. It makes you wonder. Like I know for a literary or a device of the series, they had to do keep her mysterious and all of that, but you wonder what was going on in the child's mind or what's happening that she doesn't answer people, and then she answers people in strange riddles and all of that kind of thing. It's interesting to think of Sarah as a person, why
yeah,
she's doing all these things.
yeah. I mean, she really is now.
Mm-hmm.
He had a glimmer of a conscience. Bless you.
Thank you.
He had a glimmer of a conscience,
Mm-hmm.
and now
Salute.
with Sarah coming into
Grazie.
it, she has a she is the conscience. Sarah really is the conscience.
Right.
Um, I love the fact that I shouldn't say I love it, but just that Willie is so terrified of what Barnabas is going to do to her that he brings down the poisoned milk, and she's just about to drink it, and he says, "Don't, don't,
Yeah.
don't." He's like, he's going to kill you, and I want you to go fast. I don't want it to be the way he's going to do it. And then that great moment with Sarah, and this is something that has there's so much you could do with this. Just the idea of Sarah, you told me there's got to be a way to get out of here, and she goes, "Well, I'm not allowed to tell you. I found out, and my father was really angry with me. He said you can't tell anybody, not even your brother." That's a really great, so somehow in 1795 or thereabouts, Sarah caught Joshua using that secret passageway
Oh,
and caught hell for it because Barnabas is totally perplexed. It's like, he never would have put her in that room if he thought for a moment she could get out. And
Mm-hmm.
I love it. And I think Ron Sproat deserves all the kudos in the world. First of all, it is a kinescope, so it looks like an old Universal horror movie. There's those great shots of Barnabas lying in the coffin with his cape on and
Mm-hmm.
slowly getting up, and then going through those endless corridors, which, of course, when he first took her to the cell, he got her there in about 2 minutes. Now he's going down, all of these staircases to reach her
20-minute
where she
walk.
is. And every once in a while he stops.
Well, you know,
Every once in a while he stops, and you're wondering, is he having second thoughts?
right. Well, too, they mentioned in one of them, I guess it was an audio drama, that there were whispers of munitions and slave trading
Yes.
with Joshua Collins. He says we didn't know, but there were whispers about munitions and slave trading and piracy, and it makes you wonder: is that what he built the tunnels for? To do this stuff without the family really knowing? Because Barnabas mentions that too. I understand about not wanting your family to know all of the things that you do. So is that, and like I too love those, and I'm pleased if they ever do a reboot, please show some of the uses of these tunnels and such in the old house.
Because they never used it. I was like, oh, they never used it again on the show. And you realize they had to really, because the Collinwood set was permanent. So they had to use every last square inch of that studio to get those different,
Mm-hmm.
that first great moment where you've got the two doors, and it's kind of like, let's make a deal. She doesn't know what door to go through, and it magically
Right.
opens, and we hear London Bridge. She hears the flute, and then it shuts, and you see Barnabas
What
struggling.
what they could do.
Yeah, yeah, but
What
it
they could do, and I
works.
never understood why, once he found out about those tunnels, why he didn't close off the entrance and use that for the coffin, put the coffin in there. Like, why he never hid it, like
I
in there. I don't know.
I wonder too. It's like when they come looking for the coffin. We have to assume that
Hmm.
that may be where he stowed it until Burke and Dr. Woodard left.
mm.
Right.
Uh,
All those times that they come bursting into the house.
I just wish they would have used all of those tunnels again. It seemed like a waste not to go back down that road. But
Oh,
it's like what they tell you at House of Seven Gables when you go through the secret passages. It would have been used for slaves. It would have been used for some kind of illegal deals if you had a mistress. So it's very possible that's how maybe Joshua got his mistresses or hootsies,
hmm.
in and out of the house. Or they mentioned too at the Gables, if someone had been accused of being a witch, you would have hid them in a secret passageway and said, well, they're
Well,
not
like in
here.
England, they had what were called priest holes, which were passageways where when Henry broke away from the Catholic Church, they would hide and perform masses in what were called priest holes, passageways, and panels, and all of that.
Well, I mean,
I
during the Holocaust, all of these houses that
right.
they had, fake walls and bookcases and things to try to hide the people.
So as a child, you've heard me say 1,000 times that as a child growing up in one of the original colonies, you felt like you were in Collinwood. And there were 1,000 old houses and the great house and all that. When I was young, my uncle took us to a cabin on the Eastern Shore. His boss, he worked for a place called Dickinson and Hefner, and his boss owned this old lodge. It was called, and it was built in the early 1700s, and it had passageways that the servants used. I thought they were secret passageways. In my mind, it was very Collinwoody, but it was because the servants used these to get back and forth and all of that. But they had the door in the kitchen, and it was moved from the actual outside door to being a sort of kitchen dining room entry. But it was the original wooden door that had a latch that you pulled a string to get to go up. But it had holes in it from arrows being shot
Oh,
by
wow.
the Native American folk, and there was a lot of, and this house was right on the water on the eastern shore is what we call it here, right on this rocky beach that was just a little bit away, and so at night the fog would settle over this great. It was very Collinwoody, very old house,
Sure.
and when you see those, you realize those things did exist. They did use those, so it, they were genius in putting all of this into this series as minute details, but they were brilliant because they were actually they're out there. They're out there. It was
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've got to mention that moment when Sarah visits Sam. All of a sudden she appears out of
Oh
nowhere,
yeah,
and oh, will you paint a picture of me? And well, where is your daughter? Haven't you looked everywhere for her? Well, you might want to go down to the beach. Well, I wouldn't find her there. You
yeah,
might if you go there tonight. And we get that great kind of string section, that very suspenseful. All of a sudden he kind of looks at her like, why do you say that?
yeah,
But just because if you go there tonight, you might find her. And isn't it interesting that she makes it Barnabas that moment when he comes out of the shadows and grabs her by the arm and did you really think you could escape from me? And she's trying to resist and he's like, I said come, and she lets out this primal scream. And Sam comes running through the woods. Now Barnabas is pooping down his leg because for all he knows,
yeah.
Sheriff Patterson is there, with the with
There's an
the
army with
troops,
them.
you know.
Hmm.
So and he's peering behind the rocks, and so this is again he's afraid. Yes, he could kill them, but you don't know. You don't know who else is around. It's
And now
oh
who knows
God,
about this series of panels and all? It's that had to be a long night for him. You don't know what she remembers, what she's telling. Are they going to come up through the cellar for me, or it's had to be a
that's
long
right.
night.
That's right. Yeah, even a vampire needs his
Mm-mm-mm.
depends, Jessica. That's right. Yes, I'm sure he was pooping
Ha 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 ha.
down his leg.
Oh,
Um, and then everything after that,
legit
because
cacada.
she's in the hospital, and the fact that he has the balls to show up And meanwhile, Woodard has conspired with Sam and saying, look, we're going to send her to Wyncliffe, but you got to tell everybody she's dead. I'll fill out all the
Yeah.
paperwork. You don't have to do a funeral. We're going to say, you wanted it private, but until we get to the bottom of this, Dr. Hoffman needs to, but there Barnabas shows up, and Geringer's great too in this scene. He's like, I regret to inform you that Maggie Evans is dead. She never got to say a word about what happened to her. She went into a catatonic state and she never came out of it. And for a moment, there's that look on his face almost of, oh my God, I didn't want her to die. For a moment. And then as
Yeah.
he turns and walks out, he gets this triumphant smile on his face. And mind you, Maggie is right behind the door where he's standing, and Woodard kind of waits to make sure that he's out of sight and opens the door and goes back into the room with Maggie. And there we have the end of Maggie Evans' kidnapping.
261.
Yeah.
Now, just as an aside, as a fanboy, one has to wonder, was Angelique sort of pulling some strings to protect him in those moments? You know what I mean? With what Maggie could remember, and was she assisting Julia in hypnotizing her? Because we know that Angelique wanted him alive.
Yeah.
And did do things to try and protect him. And she mentioned, what was it about? When did she find out about Victoria? There are some things that she'd mentioned to indicate that she's been watching him or checking up on him or something like that. So
as
you have to
Cassandra,
wonder, was Angelique present?
she says to the portrait, she does say to the portrait, but she says, so you're freed from your chains, and I never would have known it if Victoria Winters hadn't come back to the past.
Oh, well, then that shoots that theory to shit. But
So,
there goes that.
but
I always wondered,
it's I like that theory. I totally like the theory. The same way I feel the Josette that we've been talking about all night and that we've heard about all through 1966 is not the Josette that Vicky meets. And I believe, one, it's because Vicky changed things by just being there, and two, Angelique realized how much Vicky idolized Josette, and it was a question of never meet your idols. So
I don't like. I like the Josette ghost, but not the real Josette. She irritated the hell out of me.
because it's not the Josette they gave us on the 1991 series. That's the Josette we should have had. That's the Josette we should have had. And the question has been asked for years, even going back to when it was on. Would they have done this storyline? I mean, when the show was on the air, I was like, oh, are they going to do the kidnapping? Are they going to do that this time? And in going back and thinking to the finale of the 91 series, which right now we're in the time frame of the 91 series, maybe that would have happened, if we had come back. Maybe Barnabas being afraid, maybe he would have kidnapped her for a couple of episodes, Vicky, and tried to do the whole brainwashing thing.
So this is the 35th anniversary of the 91 series.
Right.
Yeah, we're in the 35th anniversary of the 91 show right now, yeah. Yeah. But I always wondered if they might have done that.
I remember being so upset. It added, I think all of those characters had a depth of that I don't think the 91, and I think the 91 was brilliant and I loved it. But I think because of the time, having once a week versus every day, the depth of character for each of them. And I think, like I said, the other ones did a wonderful job, but we would have missed so much that made the old show so endearing. Like I said, this Barnabas thing. He was a deep-dyed snarling, and again, because they didn't want to keep him around, a snarling villain in these episodes, and yet, he lets out just enough at times to make us really feel his humanity through all of that.
Well, and that's it. Going through this, the fan mail started building up, and this is where they were realizing that they couldn't get rid of him. They had to keep. They had to keep it going.
Parker, I believe, was they kept coming up with a character, and then and then the character would get popular, so they'd have to bring. I think it was Miss Parker
Yeah.
that said that
Yeah.
about something. They'd have to say, "Oh, we've got to keep them. People are going crazy for this." And
Yeah.
I think this is a personal opinion. You guys out there, tell me what you think. I think, and you'll pardon my language, but I think Quentin was much more of a douchebag than Barnabas was
It's
throughout.
it's
Out the
I
gate.
think
it's either
Out the gate, he's awful.
Barnabas
Out
had
he's
every.
awful.
it's either Gary or Bob who can't stand Quentin. I forget who. Gary, is it you or is it Bob?
He
Sorry, go ahead.
he was much more unbearable. And look at, I mean, coming back as a ghost, he was horrible. And for what? He was going to kill the kids. Just a terrible human being, with far less reason than Barnabas.
So, well, someone brought up Barnabas and David. We'll cover that as well. But yeah, definitely. I've said this many times. When I first saw 1897, I was like, okay, he's really handsome, but he is a douchebag. It takes a while for Quentin to grow on you, and then you realize and go, oh, all right, he's cool. He's a cat. He's he's a little randy.
He's a womanizer.
He's a womanizer, but but he's basically a good guy. He's the bad guy with a heart of gold. He kind of has that going on eventually.
To the question of whoever said that about Quentin and I mean Barnabas and David, I suggest you read Miss Parker's books if you haven't, because it's suggested that Barnabas almost becomes like a second father to David, and I think we see a lot of that in the original series. I think you get that. I mean, Christ, he's going back in time to save him.
Yeah,
Like he's very concerned about David. So
yeah.
it's you're on to something there, I think.
Oh yeah, I think you know what I think, Edie. And just what you said previously. Did you mean at the cliffs when he finds her at the cliffs that he could have killed her? I think it also goes back to that old rule of
Mm-hmm.
thumb that even the smart people have to be stupid. And in that moment, sure he could have he could have easily just snapped her neck, and that would have been the end of it. Um, but you don't know if he's a little bit stupid. That again, the conscience thing is kind of in the back of his head. Maybe I can get her, sway her over to being Josette. And then, of course, Sam shows up and all of that goes out the window. And they've already established that Vicky is going to be the new love interest. Um,
It's the Jerry Dandridge moment, right? When he has a few of those where Dandridge says to Charlie, "I'm going to give you something I don't have. I'm going to give you a choice.
yeah.
Forget about me, Charlie, and I'll forget." And Barnabas has several moments like that where he's got whispers of the humanity there.
And Edie, I mean, I agree with you. Out the gate, I'm not a fan of Quentin. But as the storyline goes, and there's a lot of humor, Quentin gets Quentin gets a lot of great zingers. One of my favorite being, with when Judith in the will, she's the mistress now, she's the owner, and that. Hey, maybe when you're done, you'll let us come upstairs with you and let us watch you write a check. That's
Oh
one of
yeah.
my
Oh no.
favorite lines.
No, and I love when the three of them work together, Quentin, Barnabas, and Angelique. I do.
Yes,
He just
yes.
seems so much worse to me. Barnabas we get pretty much, but he just seems so much worse to me than Barnabas was.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. And in parallel time, well, of course, we've said, parallel time, it's everyone, you hate everybody, you know. And
Yeah.
Maggie is the wimp to end all wimps, you know.
Renee says that Quentin was a jackass in every way through every timeline. He set it up for Barnabas to kill his brother, for crying out loud. But he's so juicy to watch. I did love his friendship with Desmond.
Yes. Yeah. He
Did
has a great.
did did anybody catch the orb that just went by me?
Yes, I just saw it over your shoulder. I did. I just saw it. The
Oh,
what?
that's so creepy. Maybe it's Jonathan Frid.
He was thanking you. Jonathan was thanking you.
Oh, and by the way, yes, we agree with you,
Oh,
Jessica. That when they read the will, it's like a Noel Coward scene.
It's an old coward scene. Louis Edmonds felt it was straight out of Little Foxes.
oh,
He always equated it to the Little Foxes. Yeah. Yeah, that is something that Noel Coward would have written. Yep.
And
And
there,
I think Parallel Time is just like Laura.
Oh, sure.
The people in Parallel Time are just like the people in Laura. Louis Edmonds is like a clip-on of Clifton Webb's character.
But in the final analysis, I love this storyline. I love
spooky.
it's spooky. It's beautifully written. I mean, yes, people have said there's a lot of exposition, but then again, it's a soap opera, and there was only so much they could show.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's to me, it's not soap opera land. I always say Dark Shadows went into soap opera land when they come back from 1795. 66, 67, 17, they keep you going. You keep turning the page.
Just good storytelling.
And yeah, and wanting to know what's coming next. So it gets the kidnapping of Maggie is one of my favorite stories.
Agreed.
I love it. I love it. I just had a brain fart.
Bob says about Quentin really quickly that he made the whole insufferable Parallel Time that much worse. I like Parallel
Pardon
Time.
me, gentlemen.
Oh, sure. I think, Jessica, we were talking about that the other night. It's when Jonathan is gone for too long, you miss him. It's like there's Betty White used to say, you've got a table with four legs. And when Jonathan is gone for too many episodes, you start to feel it. And I believe it was Darren Gross who pointed out it would have been great for Parallel Time if they could have filmed some stuff in advance of him in the coffin while Will is holding him prisoner. Just so there could have been some inserts, maybe. And I agree with that. That would have been a really good idea. It might have kept the story on a more even keel. Oh, you definitely miss Catherine. Yeah, I mean, I love Maggie. Maggie is one of my favorite characters, but I love Victoria as well. I love them both. It was kind of the end of an era, I think, when Catherine left the show. That was almost like the writing on the wall because she had been there since day one. Literally since day one, and when she leaves, it leaves a hole. I think they were expecting Kate Jackson to kind of fill that void had they come back into the present day.
Since we have a few minutes, I can tell you I'm currently in the middle of a text fight on a Dark Shadows board, talking about who were the good actors and who were the bad actors. Well, first of all, I got so pissed 3 weeks ago when they said that Grayson Hall was the worst actress, which is fucking ridiculous. But this week's new thing is that the best actor, better than Carlin, better than Frid, the best actor on the show was Robert Rodin. Now, come on, people. Robert Rodin was a wonderful man. We got the pleasure of meeting him and his wife. A great rock on tour. He told the story that Dan Curtis fired him. You see Adam go into the closet in one scene, and that's the end of the Adam storyline.
He asked for a raise. That's why that's why he was let go. He asked for a raise. But no, I mean, listen, everyone's entitled to their opinion, but no, I would not call Robert Rodin the most stellar actor on the show.
Better than Carlin, please.
No, there's no, John Carlin was one of the strongest actors on the show. I know Renee will agree. We'll get to that. We will get to that. That's Maggie's return. Tonight we're covering the kidnapping. But we will get to Maggie's return. Definitely, we will cover Maggie's return. Absolutely.
And Jessica says, as far as Robert Rodin being the best actor on the show, as her therapist would say, what is the evidence? So there you go.
No, lovely guy. Lovely guy.
Such a sweet guy.
But not the most stellar actor on the show. No. And again, I said this, I will take 200 Leviathan storylines over the Adam storyline. Any day.
Except, and we just heard from her on Friday night, she reached out to Peter and myself. we get Marie Wallace. And if we did not
We
have
love
the
Eve.
Adam storyline,
We love Eve, but as I've said, she makes it bearable. When they bring her in, at least it gives the story a little zetza.
a little zetza, a little joie de vivre,
You know, because it's kind of like you're going, all right, all right, all right, enough with this Frankenstein thing.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
He's not the only one on the show that was in Professor Stokes' closet, says Gary Swafford.
Oh, you know what, guys? Just
Naughty.
I do want to mention it's a big birthday week for Dark Shadows.
It is.
Gene Simmons from the '91 series, her birthday was yesterday. Anthony George's
Yesterday.
birthday, Joel Crothers' birthday, Catherine Lee Scott's birthday, and I'm leaving somebody else out. There's another, but this was a big week for Dark Shadows birthdays. So for all of them, whether
Oh,
What?
there's a wonderful. If you go on YouTube, it's Charles Lawton, but it's Anthony George is in it very young. I can't remember what it's called. It's on YouTube, but it's Charles Lawton. It's a little series, black and white. Um, it's something they think they shot for television, but Anthony George is like a baby in it. You got to check that out. Speaking of him,
It's funny you bring up Charles Lawton because he's on my Shadowcast list because I think he would have been a perfect Professor Stokes and a Ben Stokes for that matter. So
bingo. That's amazing. That is. I'm with you 100% on that one.
I forget the name of it, guys, but with Anthony George, he did a wonderful TV teleplay with Rosalind Russell called, I think it's called The Longest Night, or The Dark Night. I may be getting the title totally wrong, but it's on YouTube to watch. First of all, who doesn't love Rosalind Russell? She had a lot of Grayson Hall qualities, you know, that great husky voice about her. And she's funny enough, he's playing an immigrant, and there's a little bit of racial. This is set way back in the day, and I think he's playing someone of Spanish descent, and he doesn't return her affections, and so she throws him under the bus. It's you know, she's not playing a very likable character, which is unusual for Roz, because usually you love Roz Russell, but it's cool to watch. It's cool to see him in that.
And just because we're mentioning Roz Russell, we have to mention that one of our favorite Rosalind Russell movies is Majority of One, which is her and Alec Guinness, and it is brilliant. She falls in love on a cruise ship during the height of right after the
With a
World War II
Japanese man?
with a Japanese businessman.
Japanese man, played by Alec Guinness, and he's not like Mickey Rooney in Breakfast at Tiffany's.
No, it's a brilliant performance by both of them.
Oh God.
Yeah, he's playing it. He's playing it straight. He's playing it for real.
It's so wonderfully done. It actually was a Broadway show that played over 400 performances called Majority of One. Check out that movie.
That's good for a cold night. That's definitely good for a cold night.
Agreed.
And mine is called Checkmate.
Checkmate.
With Charles Lawton. I think it looks like it was a series with the bloke that played Mr. French in Family Affair, Anthony George, and Doug McClure.
Who I love.
And this episode was with Charles Lawton.
That's
Best of Checkmate, Season 1. Anthony George, Sebastian Cabot, and Doug McClure.
That's great, Christian.
Have a look.
When Maggie wanders into the Blue Whale, Frid acts like the entire Collins family caught him rifling through Maggie's underwear drawer. Love it.
Indeed.
Another moment where he's pooping down his leg.
Yes.
Which we'll cover that. We will cover that. We will cover that. And let us know what you guys want us to cover too. I mean, we've got a list of things. We're going to do our Dreamcasting episode. We've been putting that off, as I explained 2 weeks ago.
We should mention that we'll be back next Sunday, January 8th at 8 p.m. And we have a guest host with us. It'll be Michael, myself, and Peter. But Jessica will be joining us from our message boards here. So Jessica will be joining us as a guest host.
Jessica will be joining us.
She'll
as
be
guest
a
host.
Dark Shad pro. Not a bro, but a pro.
Yes.
So.
Yes. So yeah, always let us know. I had mentioned this previously that we're covering Angelique. There's no doubt about it, as well as Laura herself. But I said, you know,
in many ways, it's been 2 years that we've been doing this podcast. In many ways, we're just not ready for it yet.
And again, Laura gets her own episode, and Angelique gets her own episode. So, but it's coming. it's coming. There are certain things I want to do and certain things I want to say, and so that's why it's, I can't forget her. She's here. She's here and she's here all the time. So we'll be doing that as well. But we love your ideas, and tell your friends about us. And again, like and subscribe, guys, if you haven't done that. Yeah, please do that. And I know there's a bunch of new merchandise coming out. Apparently, somebody had tipped us off to that. There's a big, beautiful coffee table book Catherine's putting out called Dark Shadows: The Legacy, I think. And it'll be out in time for the big 6-0. So that's something to look forward to. And Hermes Press is doing a book called Dark Shadows Noir, which is just going to be black and white stills. I think from all throughout the series, not just the early days, but all throughout the series. In fact, I think it's available for pre-order. So there's a bunch of new merchandise coming out in time for the big 6-0. So we thank you all so much for joining us tonight. It's been fun. Let us know. Someone is doing one with the Dan Curtis. Oh, well, there we go. Okay, so there's stuff from Dan Curtis's archives. There you go. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it, Gary. I hopefully it doesn't move like molasses. We try to keep, we want to be informative, but what does Sophia say to Blanche about the work in the house? Do you want it fast or do you want it good? And remember, he's talking about the work.
Sophia.
So stay warm, stay dry wherever you are, and we will see you soon. Stay.